He looks at me just dead on and goes, "You are really, really wet." Just like that. And then he didn't say anything. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm wet?" And he said, "When you bring the thunder, you're going to get wet." When you bring the thunder, you're going to get wet. That's not something people say. He knew what he was doing. He was trying to intimidate me in a way that I have not experienced from any other member in this body in 8 years.
All good work is done in defiance of management.
I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not.
Go ahead, give me the finger.
The Dan Parsons Show.
Well, boys and girls, the gloves are off at the Nebraska Legislature. A bill to mandate anti-Semitism training, a policy with zero initial opposition, suddenly collapsed after a personal confrontation on the floor of the legislature. The session was quickly derailed when a lawmaker's denial of a sexual harassment allegation put the spotlight not just on policy, but on accountability for misconduct in the chamber. It was an event that exposed a total breakdown of decorum and trust. And today, we go inside the chamber with the legislator at the center of the storm. Welcome to the hottest political podcast in Nebraska. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. And my interview with State Senator Megan Hunt starts right now. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome to the show Nebraska State Senator Megan Hunt. Senator, welcome to the Dan Parsons Show.
Thank you, Dan. I'm so happy to be here and for the first time. So thank you for welcoming me.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. I've been wanting to have you on. Well, let me set this up. I asked the senator to join me today to discuss an incident a few days ago on the floor of the legislature that revolves around the debate and ultimate stalling of LB 538, a bill sponsored by Senator Brian Hardin of Gering that would mandate anti-Semitism training in schools. You had proposed an amendment to use a different definition of anti-Semitism, but then a personal confrontation occurred between you and Senator Hardin off microphone, but still in a public setting on the floor of the legislature. You allege that Senator Hardin made inappropriate, sexually charged comments, which he denies. So just for our audience, Senator, who haven't been keeping track of this controversy, can you just walk us through what happened?
Yeah, so to me, it was a completely normal day. You know, we've got bills scheduled, we're debating bills. This anti-Semitism bill, it's a bill that I want to pass. It's one that I support. And I introduced an amendment to that bill that I felt improved the bill. A lot of people, just as a matter of context and background, a lot of people had problems with the definition of anti-Semitism that was used in his draft because it kind of conflated anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel. And a lot of people have consternation about that definition. So I was trying to address that problem in a completely good faith way with an amendment that we had received that morning. And the bill came up faster than we anticipated because we passed over the one before it, which we weren't expecting. So I get up, I introduce my amendment, I speak about what I'm trying to do, and then as is customary, as is completely normal and professional, I got off the mic, and as some other people were debating and talking about it, I went over under the balcony to speak to Senator Hardin, the introducer, to say, I kind of went up next to him and I leaned over and I said, "Brian, is this just a non-starter? Like, tell me what you think about this amendment. Is there any way that this could work for you?" And, this is the type of conversation you would have with anybody that I've had 100 million times in here, in my 8 years in the legislature. And he turned and he looked at me right into my eyes and he goes, "You're a non-starter." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You're a non-starter." I said, "So it's just because I introduced the amendment?" I said, "Could we get someone else to introduce it? Is there any kind of compromise? Have you read it? Have you read the amendment?" And he looks at me just dead on and goes, you are really, really wet. Just like that, with that tone, with that cadence. And then he didn't say anything. And I said, excuse me, I'm wet? And I turn and I look at the pages who are right here. There were some staffers behind us. And the pages, who are college kids, were completely professional. They were just looking forward. And I kind of thought to myself, like, did you guys hear this? And so then I turned back to him and, I said, excuse me, I'm wet. And he said, when you bring the thunder, you're going to get wet. And it's like, first of all, that doesn't clarify it, because like you made me ask you what the hell you were talking about before you clarified that you meant when you bring the thunder, you're going to get wet. Like, that's not a saying. That's not something people say. Besides the fact that when it's thundering, it doesn't even mean it's necessarily raining. Like, on 40 levels, that makes no sense. So then he goes to the press and says, oh, what I said was when it rains, it pours. And it's like, I bet you wish you said that. I bet you wouldn't be feeling so stupid right now if you had said that instead. But he knew what he was doing. He was trying to intimidate me in a way that I have not experienced from any other member in this body in 8 years. And
that's saying something.
Unfortunately for his story, there are many people who heard what he said to me and can corroborate what I said. And I am filing a formal complaint with the executive board, and all of those facts will come out throughout that process.
I want to follow up on that, but maybe just help our audience understand what then happened as far as the bill. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh then began a filibuster.
Yeah,
citing concerns
I disagree with that characterization. I disagree with that. She didn't begin a filibuster.
Okay.
What happened after that was I went and I spoke to the speaker. I immediately told Speaker John Arch what happened. The next thing I did was I immediately went to the press under the balcony and told them what happened. And then I was just kind of putzing around deciding what I was going to do. I was thinking, am I going to get on the mic and talk about this? So I went over to a couple friends of mine in the body, including Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, and I told them what happened. And that's when Michaela put her light on. It was not her intention to filibuster the bill, so I wouldn't characterize it that way. She was, in her way, as she does, she was speaking, about her frustration with the story that I shared, kind of without naming me and without saying exactly what happened. And so I did decide to put my light on too and say what happened, because, I said this in my fore speech, which was on YouTube, people can see it, but I felt very ashamed. I felt very embarrassed that he said that to me. And I felt crazy. I felt like that can't really be what he said, but it was. And so I thought, I am not the one. I know that this is a man who has a reputation for bullying women in particular. There are many people in this building who have stories about him, and those are their stories to share, not mine. But I said, with me, this pattern can stop today. Like, you will not speak to me like this in the workplace, and you're going to be on notice that we are all watching what you're saying, and you do not need to be getting away with this anymore. So I spoke on it in the moment. And then they voted to adjourn the body just because everything had gone so far off the rails at that point. And that's what's so disappointing, because my intention was not to stop the bill. I mean,
you wanted to improve it in your mind. Yeah.
My intention was to improve the bill and have a normal debate, but he had to say all this gross sexual stuff, so he derailed it.
As a former political operative, I just want to comment that, yes, you've had 8 years of experience in the legislature, and that's not a small thing. But I can't imagine someone in a public setting being able to gather yourself and then speak publicly about this issue in just a few minutes' time. So I think that's, anyway, just from my PR and political background, I think that's pretty remarkable. So what does this say, Senator, about the bigger picture of decorum in the unicameral and this frankly ongoing pattern of behavior that's being exposed? We recently, earlier this session, had the resignation of former Senator Dan McEwen over misconduct allegations. Anyway, just your thoughts.
Well, I feel like what I've learned in 8 years in the legislature is that the rules are the easy part. You know, it took me a long time to learn the rules, and I'm pretty good with them now. Procedure, all of those things. But what really sustains the institution are the habits of the members, is the way we comport ourselves as statesmen, as professionals, as representatives of the people who sent us here. And there's no rule that compels respect for these norms. They only persist because we members agree to abide by them. And you know, there was a time when we would read an amendment before dismissing it, as Senator Hardin did. There was a time where, you know, we wouldn't be reopening up constitutional language constantly to roll back the will of the voters. It's not just decorum and behavior. There are a lot of norms that reflect the professionalism and dignity that this position demands that have fallen by the wayside. And I don't know, you can theorize about why that is. I think that we have a lot of candidates running for office who are not self-motivated, who are not driven by the passion to solve a problem, but instead are handpicked by party leaders to be coronated as the next lawmaker, the next senator, the next one. And I think that gives people a really inflated sense of ego and importance. And you just have to leave that. You know, like you cannot bring that into the chamber and be successful.
We've kind of lost the definition of citizen legislators. And
Yes.
and again, one of the reasons I started this podcast was, you know, we're in this environment, obviously. You're either on the red team or the blue team, and there's nothing in between. And for crying out loud, and I've said this before, I'll get on my soapbox for a moment. This is the most unique legislative body in America, a nonpartisan one-house legislature. We accomplish things that other legislatures across the country envy in the amount of bills and the amount of time it takes to pass legislation. And so we've lost a lot of that spirit of working together. And so maybe talk a little bit about that process. You know, in a normal work environment, I don't know what it's like in other legislative bodies across the country, but in a normal work environment, there's a process. There's an HR department. So maybe talk a little bit about that and talk about what your next steps are. You alluded to it a moment ago in this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of team, you know, I'm not even on a red or blue team. You know, I left the Democratic
Right.
Party years ago, and I'm the independent in the body now. But that's another unique thing about Nebraska. You know, we get to do things like that. And I talk to my colleagues who serve in legislatures in other states all over the country, and they are so envious of what we get to do here. You know, no majority minority leaders, no caucuses. We're all really equals in that chamber in terms of our responsibility and capacity. But in terms of next steps, you're absolutely right that, you know, in the legislature, it is not a business. You know, it is not like a corporation or something. So we really don't have an HR department. We don't really have a very formal way to make these complaints. What we do is a staffer or member of the public can make a complaint to the executive board. The executive board is made up of, I want to say 9, 10 members who are elected by all of us. So we choose our leaders in the legislature to serve on the executive board, and they have a process to go through in terms of investigating complaints. If necessary, they hire outside legal counsel to help adjudicate the complaints. If necessary, they decide if state patrol needs to get involved to bring charges. And that is the formal process through which this would go in the legislature. If there was a criminal complaint, I mean, I would go through the legal, you know, channels to do that, but it's more of a workplace complaint.
And you are preparing that complaint to the exec board?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a time frame?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm actually meeting with them later today to talk about that. So, it's all unfolding.
Got it.
And
Got
I'm
it.
not,
Got it.
I want to say something to your listeners. Like, I have never made a sexual harassment complaint. I have never made a discrimination complaint. I'm a very vocal member of the legislature. I know that I have a strong reputation, good or bad, amongst many Nebraskans. But this is not what I want to spend my time doing. Senator Brian Hardin said to the press that this is my quote unquote MO, my way of doing things. And I don't know what he could possibly mean by that, because I am not one to make a complaint like this. But because of this pattern of behavior that he has, because of the completely shameless, bold, just direct way that he did that to me right in the chamber, in front of the kids, in front of the staff, I'm like, I think that I am actually going to escalate this.
Yeah. Well, wrapping up this topic, and I want to move on to one other topic, Senator, while I have you here. And by the way, over your lunch hour, thanks for spending it with me. What's your message to Nebraskans about holding lawmakers accountable for their behavior and their conduct?
Well, the most important way that we are going to hold lawmakers accountable is at the ballot box. And that's great. It's also a little depressing because we really only get that chance here every 4 years. You need to be researching who your candidates are. I think that a big reason that we have such a low level in the legislature, and I'll tell you, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, conservative, progressive, I don't meet a lot of Nebraskans who are happy with the legislature. It's not on one side or the other. We know we have problems here. The people know. So really research who these candidates are, because the person who wins is always just the least bad person. So make sure you've got good people on that ballot that you can even vote for. But between elections, we need other ways to hold us accountable. So do that by demanding town halls. If someone even deigned to have one, you could go attend it and ask them the tough questions. Letters to the editor, I think, are kind of a lost art. You all need to be writing letters to the editor again. Those are very cool. Calling, emailing, writing, talking to your friends and neighbors and family, just doing something to raise the consciousness about whatever problems, whatever issues you have with your elected officials. There's really no wrong way to do that. Just do something.
Very good. Well, do something. That's right. For crying out loud, do something.
Everyone
I like
did
that.
Something would happen.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, I wanted to ask you one other issue. We're recording this on Tuesday. I think this will air everywhere tomorrow on Wednesday. But Governor Pillen is scheduled to announce a new partnership later today to bring Turning Point USA chapter to every Nebraska high school, promoting student-led engagement and free speech. The effort, according to a news release announcing this event, the effort will advance TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk's vision, as well as defending student-led engagement and free speech. Also in that news release, I found interesting, they announced that the initiative, that they said they would address any school administrator who actively worked to block or delay or deny students from forming a TPUSA chapter. And again, just a reminder for our audience, the governor has been very vocal supporter of Charlie Kirk following his September assassination. He even put out a press release ordering all Nebraska flags to fly at half-staff in honor of Mr. Kirk. So anyway, your thoughts on this effort by the governor?
I admire the governor's endeavors to continue to honor a man that he held in high esteem. What I would say to Nebraskans and what I've said to the governor is that the breaking news and the good news is that every high school in Nebraska that has students that want to start a Turning Point USA chapter can do that today. They can already do that. And so I don't know if it is really compatible with free speech to compel every high school to start a club that the students may not want, because who wants to talk about economics? Republicans love to talk about this. If there's a demand for these clubs, They will be in the schools. Students already have the capacity to start Turning Point USA chapters. To me, this is really more faux outrage, more performative culture war division. Even by saying it like this in the press release, saying, we're going to make sure there's a Turning Point USA chapter in every Nebraska school. We're going to make it possible for them to have one. It's already possible. So someone who doesn't know would be hearing this announcement going, oh my God, they've been preventing these kids from having their club. Not the case whatsoever. All this is doing is contributing to more division, raising more divisive rhetoric, and he knows that he's doing that. I also think the governor knows what will come of having more division among the youth. High school kids, 9 to 12th grade, can start young Republican clubs, conservative clubs, Second Amendment clubs, Bible club, Turning Point USA chapter, whatever they want. This is already possible in public schools in Nebraska. And I think that by stoking and encouraging more young people who may be ideologically aligned with someone like Charlie Kirk to start these clubs, I do think that it's a deliberate provocation. And I think that we're living in a time now where we need to be working together to bring down the temperature, to increase mutual respect, to stop throwing, rhetorical grenades and ideological bombs, and level set a little bit. And by incentivizing kids to do the opposite of that, I think that's a really destructive thing for this next generation. But I'll tell these kids, if you want to start a Turning Point chapter, go ahead and do it today, because you already can.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Well, as we wrap up, Senator, you're finishing your 8th and final year in the legislature. There's still, a lot of work yet to be done. What do you hope that people will look back on you, whoever your successor is, and your constituents of, are there things that you're most proud of, even though you got quite a bit of work yet to be done? But what are some of the things that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish in your nearly 8 years?
Yeah, I'm going into constitutionally mandated retirement, so 8 years is all we really get here. And it's really in like the 6th year, the 5th year that you start to realize what's going on. And so I do think it's kind of a shame to take the experience out of the legislature and move that into the lobby, basically, and also to take the choice away from Nebraskans on who they want to represent them. But what I'm most proud of, I'm very proud of the work we did to recognize and support creative arts districts in Nebraska. That was my initiative. And that project of creating the creative arts district statewide was really a gift to my district. In my district in Omaha, we have Dundee and Benson. We have a long history of supporting the arts in my neighborhoods, galleries, theaters, all of those things. So it was a love letter to my people and a thank you to them. And I've been so encouraged to see how those have taken off throughout the entire state, and so that more Nebraskans can enjoy the arts all over the state. Also, the work we've done for foster youth, for caregivers, and people, taking care of elderly relatives. We've helped them out a bit. One fun bill we did was the name, image, and likeness legislation. Mm-hmm. Nebraska was the 2nd state to pass that, thanks to our work. And now, of course, that's the law all across, the country. There's a lot I'm not proud of. And unfortunately, when you're kind of in the thick of the session, as I am right now, those are the things that come to mind first. Yeah. And so it's a good question for you to ask me that, to kind of try to remember that it's not all negative, that we do good work in here, and that we need to focus on doing more.
Yeah. Well, Senator Megan Hunt, thank you. But boy, I love your district. I'm a Lincoln guy, but I love hanging out in your district. So
that's what I tell people. When you come to Omaha, you're probably coming to my district.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I do. Well, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for your service, and best of luck in the rest of the session.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Senator Hunt, for coming on the show to discuss a very difficult event in the Unicameral. I deeply appreciate your perspective on the state of decorum and accountability in the Nebraska Legislature. Hey, and before we go, don't forget to subscribe to the Dan Parsons Show on YouTube and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next important breaking news. Say thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. Executive producer Chase Porter, producer and graphic designer Ike Samanis, and Panology Tech Solutions. And thanks most of all to each of you for your support. For Senator Hunt and the entire team, I'm Dan Parsons. Now go do good things.